everybody, and welcome back to the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. I'm your host, Jesse Weber, and I'm so happy you're joining us today because we have a big case that we're covering. We are continuing our coverage in the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan. Now, for anybody who's just joining us, or even if you know about this case, where are we right now? This is that case about that convicted murderer and accused predator of women who is on trial for the kidnapping and murder of a gas station clerk named Jessica Heringa, who went missing back in 2013. Now, her body has never been found. But despite that, the prosecution is moving forward with their case against Willis. And how are they doing that? Well, one of the ways they're doing that is by taking evidence from other crimes that Mr. Willis committed or may have committed and using that in this case. It's a unique set of circumstances. You don't usually see that in a trial. But this case is not like every other one. So we should tell you again that Mr. Willis was convicted last year in the 2014 shooting death of jogger Rebecca Bletch. He's already serving a life sentence for that. Evidence from that crime scene is being used to examine the crime scene in the Heringa disappearance. Also, it should be noted that after this case, Mr. Willis will most likely stand trial in the 2016 kidnapping of a teenager who escaped his van. Evidence from that event is being used in this trial. So there's a lot to talk about. We are going to be live in that courtroom today in Michigan. You will not miss anything. We'll go straight there when we have the feed. But before we do that, we have to talk about what happened yesterday. And yesterday, we had some crucial witnesses in this case. And one of those crucial witnesses was a woman named Michelle Shanotala. This is a person that worked with the defendant. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can't even explain to you what I'm about to say. This is amazing. Her underwear was found in Mr. Willis's shed. Her gun was found in Mr. Willis's van. She noticed scratch marks on his arms in what she said could have been the day or time frame after Heringa disappeared. This was a crucial witness. So we have a short report about her testimony from yesterday. Take a look.
A co-worker of convicted serial killer Jeffrey Willis took the stand in the kidnapping and murder trial of Jessica Heringa. Michelle Shanotola's gun and underwear were found when authorities searched Willis's van and home. Shanotola, who worked with Willis at Herman Miller's, claimed he knew where she lived and would often go snowmobiling near her residence. Willis knew she had a gun, and that very same gun went missing in February 2013 before it was later discovered in his van.
Now, can you tell us the last time that you saw that firearm?
Was the weekend of February 22nd and 23rd of 2013.
I want to draw your attention to early March of 2013. Do you recall a time where you observed some snowmobile tracks around your house?
Yes.
Now, was that unusual or a normal occurrence? The snowmobile tracks, that is.
I call it unusual because it only happened one time a year.
This witness recalled the night when Willis came into work following Jessica Heringa's disappearance.
I recall him having scratch marks on his arms.
Did you ask him about those scratch marks?
Yes.
And what did the defendant tell you about them?
He told me that he had a new puppy, a playful puppy.
And was it the puppy that caused the scratch marks?
Yes.
Authorities discovered 2 pairs of her underwear in Willis's shed. She testified there was no reason for them to be there, and she claimed Willis had a weird fascination with her undergarments.
He'd always say, "Can I have a pair of your underwear?" And I would, no.
Okay.
On cross-examination, the defense pressed her about her memory of when Jessica Heringa went missing.
The point that's being made here is the day after Ms. Heringa disappears, you notice those scratches. But you've testified you don't remember the date Ms. Heringa disappeared. And so the question is, how do you know it was the day after?
I don't.
Okay.
Willis is currently serving a life sentence for another woman's murder and is awaiting trial for the abduction of a teenage girl. For Law and Crime, I'm Rachel Stockman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the case that we are covering, the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan. Again, this man who was on trial for abducting and killing a woman named Jessica Haringa, who went missing back in 2013. And what we just played for you in that report was the testimony from a co-worker of the defendant. But there's so much to break down from her testimony. So to help me talk about a little bit more about this, joining me on set is Linda Kenney Baden, a criminal defense attorney. Linda, it's great to see you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
We have to talk about this woman. We have to talk about the woman that worked with the defendant. Now, let's break it down. First, I got to start with the underwear, okay?
Oh my
Her
gosh.
underwear was found in his shed, okay? Is that evidence of guilt? And the defense tried to say, at least, well, how do you know that was your underwear? Couldn't it have same make and model? What do you think?
Well, let's start from the time I left here Tuesday afternoon, a lot has happened. This underwear thing is amazing because it really is other crimes evidence. Because to get it, he's got to break into her house, remember, and get the gun and the underwear. I mean, that's kind of sick to begin with, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe not Schneiderman, former AG Schneiderman sick, but certainly sick. But again, this guy has the worst luck, doesn't he? He says he's not guilty, which is his right to do, but he is around the house at the time or she thinks around the house with a snowmobile at the time the underwear stolen. He comes in with scratches sometimes after Miss Haringa goes missing and is presumed dead, murdered, right? And he's also around the Blush murder, and he's around the kidnapping. So he's either got the worst luck or he's guilty of all the crimes.
We can't forget the fact that that gun that she had a laser sight, and the battery cover for that laser sight was found at the Haringa crime scene.
Right.
So I think it's really interesting for our viewers and our listeners on SiriusXM to understand how these three crimes, or I should say these three different events, are connected. And it's interesting because you have the 2014 shooting death of Rebecca Bletch.
Right.
Then you have this woman, well, before that, now you have the disappearance of Jessica Haringa.
Right.
Then in 2016, he's accused of trying to kidnap a teenager, and the prosecution is saying this is all about a pattern, right? Because usually you're not allowed to put this evidence in.
That's right. You're only allowed to put evidence in if it's the pattern of a crime or the crimes are so similar. But the crimes all get connected here, and this comes from what I mentioned when we were off there talking about something called the doctrine of chances. It started with in England, that you can't be so unlucky that all this is connected. And how is it all connected? Well, the woman who was kidnapped says this is the guy who kidnapped her. I mean, he has some excuse that he was trying to help her, and he rolled his van up windows to keep her from getting her hair mussed up, and instead of keeping her in the van. It's all about control. He's connected to the Blush murder. He's convicted of the Blush murder. Let's start with that. He's connected to the Haringa murder because he knew he had a gas receipt from the Exxon station where she pumped gas on his bed, at his bedside. Who does that? Who keeps an Exxon receipt that's specifically by Jessica Haringa when she pumped his gas by his bedside?
And
he's all connected.
And he also had a VIX folder, a folder titled VIX, short for victims, and her name was in it. Again, he claimed that he was just compiling this folder to help the police. But here's the flip side of it, okay? Here's the little strange part. This is an interesting case in that there's no body. So how do the defense has an advantage here. How do we definitively know that he was involved in her disappearance? I mean, do we have that level of evidence that we have in other crime scenes?
Well, it's a two-step process. First, you have to show the fact that she's disappeared means that she's dead, that she's a victim of a homicide. And you do that by showing that she doesn't show up from work, she doesn't take out money for her bank account, she doesn't call her family, she doesn't call her kids. That's how you establish that. And matter of fact, I had a cousin who was killed in New Jersey. First case ever prosecuted in New Jersey without a body.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And that's how you establish it.
Yeah.
The second way, then you have to establish that he is connected to that crime, which they can do through all this other evidence.
Linda, you touched upon a really good point, and again, I'm sorry for your loss.
It was a long time ago, but it's an interest. It started the whole idea that you could convict somebody without a body.
Yeah, no, I've seen it happen before, but you mentioned a good point. You have to establish that Jessica Haringa is no longer with us. And one of the people that testified yesterday explained that. That is a person named Dakota Quayle Dyer. This was Jessica Haringa's boyfriend. And he made it very clear that she wouldn't disappear, especially when she had a son. And there was no indication that she would just disappear, that all accounts point to the fact that there was foul play here. We're going to play you some of his testimony from yesterday. Take a look. Oh, hello there, everybody. This is Jesse Weber, your host here at the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. We're covering the Jeffrey Willis case right now out of Michigan. We're waiting for the live feed. This is the case of that man who is on trial for abducting and murdering a woman named Jessica Haringa, who went missing back in 2013. Now, despite the fact that her body has never been found, the prosecution is going forward with their case. Let's talk a little bit more about it with criminal defense attorney Linda Kenney Baden. Linda, great to see you again. Let's talk a little bit about what we were just watching before the break. We were playing the testimony of Dakota Quill Dyer, who was Jessica's boyfriend. The defense under cross-examination is really trying to tease out that point that she had a heroin problem.
Right.
She had a drug dealer.
Right.
Doing that, especially pointing that out for the victim, is that an effective strategy?
Oh, it's so tough. You have a fine line when you are attacking the victim, which is going on here. What they're trying to say is that she was a heroin addict, so maybe the heroin dealer killed her because she didn't pay her bills, or maybe she's somewhere she overdosed and just has never been found. That's what they're trying to say. But instead of saying that, could there be another situation? Did she take care? Did she have problems with overdosing? They're not doing that. They're just kind of like hinting at it. And I think hinting at it is worse than actually coming out and saying it, to be honest with you.
You do?
Absolutely.
Because they stressed a little bit later on in his testimony that he and Jessica got into a physical altercation at one point. They would fight. Then again, a lot of couples fight. There's even times people get physical, not justifying in any which way, but that doesn't make, he said he had absolutely nothing to do with her disappearance.
Right.
There's no indication that the drug dealer had anything to do with the disappearance. But then again...
Or that she overdosed.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. We're talking about reasonable doubt here, right? So in the minds of the jurors, if they don't have a body and they don't actually see anybody, Jeffrey Willis, directly killing her or taking her and didn't see him in the vicinity, again, his van may or may not have been at the gas station at the time of this
Looks
disappearance.
pretty good that it was.
Is this reasonable doubt, though?
No, I don't think so. I mean, is it the way you have to go if you're the defense attorney here? Yeah, that's all you have. Plus, you have the cousin who you're going to point the finger at, and I anticipate and say that he's the real killer, because that's really what you have here.
Let's talk about that for a second. You mentioned Kevin Blum. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody who's been following the Jeffrey Willis case knows this name, Kevin Blum. He is the cousin of the defendant, and in the previous case, let's not forget, Mr. Willis has already been convicted in the shooting death of jogger Rebecca Blech. This happened back in 2014, and during the course of that case, Kevin Blum came forward and said that this man is the killer, and I helped during the Jessica Haringa disappearance get rid of her body. But Linda, as we know, the body was never found. And he got in trouble for saying one thing to the police, saying, I know where the body is, but there really was no body.
But then what happened to the body? Did perhaps Willis move it? We don't know the answers to this. All the prosecution has to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, is that Willis is the person who committed this crime, right? Now, the way you poke holes, the defense attorney is what they're doing. Maybe she was a heroin addict. Maybe she overdosed. Maybe she got killed by her boyfriend. Maybe this, maybe that. And while the defense doesn't have a burden of proof, however, when you start pushing those maybes, you better have a good indication in the evidence that that could be true. Because while we know the burden of proof is not on the defense, effectively it is. Once you lay out a theory, you better have some good evidence behind it, because or else the jury just gets mad and angry, and you as a lawyer lose your credibility, and therefore your client loses his credibility.
You make a good point, especially when you have a defendant who may not be so likable.
Oh, and he's not likable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I should tell you, for anybody who's been following the Jeffrey Willis case, when he was sentenced in the Rebecca Blech murder, he blew a kiss to the gallery. Think about that one for a second. So this guy is in the courtroom. Obviously, it's a different set of jurors, but
control.
It's about control, as Linda says. All right, we're going to play some more of the testimony from Jessica's boyfriend. This was from yesterday. And as soon as we have the live feed, ladies and gentlemen, in that Michigan courtroom, we'll make sure to go to it. Here again is Dakota Quill Dyer in the Jeffrey Willis case. Let's go. That's the defense trying to poke holes in the prosecution's case in the Jeffrey Willis trial. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Jesse Weber, here on the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. So again, yeah, we are covering the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan, a man who's on trial for abducting and murdering a gas station clerk named Jessica Haringa, who disappeared back in 2013. And despite the fact that her body has never been found, the prosecution is moving forward with their case against Mr. Willis. Let's break it down a little bit more before we go into our live feed later. Again, I'm joined by criminal defense attorney Linda Kenney Baden. We talked about it a little bit in the break. Again, what the defense, is trying to do is say, okay, this is Jessica's boyfriend on the stand. This is who we were just listening to.
Right.
Jessica had a drug problem. You knew she had a drug dealer. You knew about this. You guys had problems in your relationship. Is it so quick to say that Jeffrey Willis is the person that was responsible for her disappearance when there's all these different factors here? And you expressed to me in the break that that's not a fair statement to make.
No, it's not anymore, because let me tell you, it used to be when I was a prosecutor, you go after people with drug problems. Now, when you pick a jury and you ask if anybody has a drug problem or family has a drug problem, every hand goes up. So to attack somebody for having a drug problem, whether it's the witness or whether it's the victim here, really falls on deaf ears, because I'll guarantee you that every member of that jury has somebody that they know, some member of their family that has a drug issue. So it's not very effective anymore, unless you're saying because they have a drug issue, they can't remember things. But that's not this cross-examination, Jesse. It's just not going there.
If the defense is trying to do anything, and again, they may have an advantage in the sense that the body has never been found, right? We keep talking about that. We talked about that. But here's what's something we need to definitely address. During the first day of testimony, we learned that some things were found in Mr. Willis's van. I'm going to tell you, he had a toolbox in there. And in that toolbox, are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? Here we go. 2 photos showing 2 naked women with a man clad in underwear. A lockbox with nitro gloves and ammunition. Leather gloves. Handcuffs attached to a chain. A J-hook. A ball gag. Sex toys. Rope. A metal bar with leather restraints on the end. A tube of lubricating jelly. Batteries and 2 keys, one of them to the handcuffs. Now, Linda... This is not a fun kit here. This is what they're describing as a rape kit. But Jeffrey Willis has denied everything and has said that all of these items, including, by the way, insulin that was found, insulin shots, as well as a diagram of where you inject somebody with insulin, all of this can be explained away by his defense.
Well, I'm sure every juror has one of these kits under their seat with a ball gag. I didn't even know what a ball gag was when they first showed it out because it went so fast. Chains, handcuffs. This is indicative of torture. This is indicative of sexual torture, sexual perversion. This goes beyond Eric Schneiderman, who I have to keep mentioning because it's so outrageous along with that. But this is terrible. And this guy is so controlling. Juries watch everything, okay? You have to be very careful when you have a defendant. They watch everything the defendant does. The camera's usually focused on them. And when you watch him, he's got that controlling appearance as a defendant. He's grabbing his attorneys, he stands up. That control is what causes these sexual perversion crimes, okay? And that's indicative of it. It may not cause it, but it's indicative of it. And that's what you have here. What do you use handcuffs for in your car? In a secure safe that has a lock to it?
He said he had a bad relationship with his wife. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Willis was married at one point and said, look, he had a bad relationship with his wife. The sex life was going down. Porn was his outlet. That's why he had so much porn on his property. But maybe this is his outlet.
Well,
is that a fair explanation?
There's porn, and then there's handcuffs and torture and insulin, which I think he's going to say belonged to his wife. But he has it. He has it in his car. And if you're going to control a victim, what are you going to do? You're going to shoot them with insulin until they pass out. That's exactly how you control a victim. So, again, the prosecution has the burden of proof in every criminal case, as we know. As you know, I'm a criminal defense attorney. But you have to temper when you're a defense attorney what you're putting forward. It has to make sense to that jury. And it's not going to make sense to that jury that he's keeping this in his truck and he has attachments to all 3 of these women. And that's just, playful toys.
Right. That's, Linda, you're saying it really well here. Again, we're covering the Jeffrey Willis case. I want to continue playing for you some of the testimony from the victim's boyfriend and explain a little bit more about who she was and what she was about, and where you can try to hear the defense poking holes in the prosecution's theory that Jeffrey Willis is the one who's responsible for her disappearance. Let's go back to testimony from yesterday. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Jesse Weber, here on the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. Okay, not a lot of time to talk because we are live right now in the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this man is on trial for abducting and murdering a woman named Jessica Haringa, who disappeared from a gas station where she worked back in 2013. And despite the fact that her body has never been found, the prosecution is moving forward with their case. And they are doing that, that by saying, let's not forget, by saying that, remember, Mr. Willis was already convicted in the 2014 shooting death of Rebecca Bletch. They're using evidence from that crime here, and he's been implicated in trying to kidnap a teenager back in 2016. Evidence from that is being used here. We have a live feed in the courtroom. Let's go. Welcome back to Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. Everybody, you're listening to live testimony in the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan, a man who is on trial for abducting and killing a gas station clerk named Jessica Heringa. We have some critical testimony going on right now. We'll take a quick break. We'll go straight back into the courtroom. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Law and Crime Network and Law and Crime on Sirius XM Radio. I'm your host, Jesse Weber. We are covering the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan right now. We have a live feed. This is about this man who was on trial for allegedly abducting and killing a woman named Jessica Heringa, who disappeared back in 2013 from her gas station job. On the stand right now is Susan Follett, a woman who worked with the victim. And in the night in question, when we believe Jessica disappeared or was taken, she drove by the gas station. She saw a silver van, and according to the prosecution, it was Willis's silver van, and the person she saw in that van was Jeffrey Willis. And what was he doing? Abducting Jessica Heringa. Let's listen in to this critical testimony. We are covering the Jeffrey Willis case out of Michigan right now, a man who is on trial for the abduction and murder of a woman named Jessica Heringa, who disappeared back in May of 2013, and her body has never been found. Joining me on set right now is criminal defense attorney Kenney Baden. We've been talking about Susan Follett, who's on the stand right now. She worked at Exxon at the same place where the victim worked. You hear what she said. Now, she thought she saw a man who had shaggier hair, like this curly blondish hair. Maybe he was clean-shaven. It doesn't match the description of the defendant. However, that silver van is what's tying him, because that silver van seemed to be used in the other crimes. For example, we know that he has been implicated in the potential abduction of a teenager. So that van may attach him, but if she can't positively identify him, isn't this a win for the defense?
Well, it's a good point for the defense. The problem is, with the longer hair, he could always be wearing a wig, trying to hide himself a little bit. And we don't know whether or not he was clean-shaven any other time, or whether she got a glimpse of him from the nose up. So, yes, the defense makes some good points, but the problem is, we know this is the van. We know this silver van is tied to all three. We know that he knew Jessica because he bought gas from her. And she's got such credibility that this is exactly when Jessica was taken. It just, I think that her whole credibility overrode the fact that she couldn't possibly identify him. Now, if I were the defense attorney, I would have gone in and said, you know Mr. Willis, you didn't go in and report him right away. No, and nothing today. You saw nothing. You didn't report him even until now. No, I would have gone there. Those are good points to make, especially it's an interesting case because there's no body, and so it's hard to positively identify him as the killer because we don't know what ultimately happened to her. Linda, thank you so much for coming on this morning. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure having you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going back live into the Jeffrey Willis case. Let's go.